Good morning. It is another day that you've managed to see. So, first of all, congratulations on your streak of maximum number of days alive. You've made it to another one that you haven't beaten yet. So, here's to many more of those. Today, I'm talking about something which is related to that actually. If you've been paying attention over the past few days, I'm talking about the burnout in relation to the six great fears that were stated by Napoleon Hill in his book, Think and Grow Rich. Those six of them are fear of poverty, which we've covered, fear of criticism, which we did yesterday, fear of ill health, which we'll do today, fear of loss of love of someone, which we'll do tomorrow, fear of old age, and then fear of death. It's funny, like when I do these things, there's usually a structure. Something like this helps me because I'm like, okay, I've got some stimulus to work off and I have an idea of what I'm going to talk about based on the topic. But then I get started on bringing information together. And then I realize that there's so much more attached to the thing than I thought there was when I started. And this is one of them, right? Fear of ill health. When I was reading the title, and I've read Think and Grow Rich before, there were certain elements that came up to mind. It's like, yeah, of course, that makes sense. You know, you experience something when you're younger, it's a genetic condition or something like that, and you become a hypochondriac, or you have, fear of, you're a germaphobe, and all this kind of stuff might happen, and it can affect your experience because it adds stress to your body, and then you have this fear of things going wrong, and so you overcompensate, it builds stress in your body, and then it leads you to burnout because your lived experience is so unique. But then I realized, no, actually, there's more than that. And I'm going to talk about that today, right? So, fear of ill health, I'm going to look at it in terms of three main areas, okay? Number one is fear from personal experience with illness. So, something happens to you when you're young and you're like, I don't want that to happen again. You look at what the things are to avoid it, and then that becomes something that you overcompensate for later on in life. So, for example, if one day you catch malaria, then in the future you are always going to take your pills. You're always going to make sure that all your medical records are set to make sure you have all your injections and all that kind of stuff. And any kind of threat of anything like that happens again, it becomes a trigger because you have a lived experience that it pulls you back towards. And you're like, because I don't want that to happen again. Why am I not sleeping? Because I want to get these topics out while it's early, while it's fresh in my mind. And then it also acts as a good way to start my day. I can get up, I could do these with you, I can cover a little bit of content, help somebody, and then I can get on with my day. But thanks, Dr. Ava. By the way, if anyone doesn't know who Dr. Ava is, make sure to follow her. Make sure to be at her talks. And if anyone's writing any kind of books, make sure to get in touch with her because she can help you with that because she's amazing. So we have that idea about personal experience with the illness. Like you go through something and you don't want to happen again, and then you overcompensate for it. But then it becomes a trigger, which is the main point I'm making. The second one, which is family history of health issues. So something's hereditary. And when something is hereditary, it becomes something that you go looking for sometimes, right? So it's okay, you research this thing and then you find out there's other things attached for it. And the things that attach to it become triggers as well. So you start to think to yourself, okay, this thing might be flaring up because I've got a slight headache. And then it becomes a panic. Okay, cool. Problem with that is headaches, for example, can happen for any number of reasons, and it can happen just naturally through your day. Are you hydrated, etc.? But if that becomes a trigger for this big thing, then it becomes something you're constantly worried about. And this is something I didn't necessarily think about too much when I first thought about it. Your personal experience and your hereditary conditions. and how those things are attached to so many other mild symptoms that any symptoms becomes a big trigger for you. And I didn't realize how widespread this actually is. um, you can find yourself in a state of constant panic, constant worry, constant anxiety because you keep yourself away from certain foods, certain places, certain animals, certain things, because you know that, oh my gosh, okay, cool. If I get one hair lands on me, this could have a severe effect on my physical condition later on. Might not be something I can come back from this time. I don't have my jabs. I don't have my, whatever it is, my pills today. So I'm at risk. And that can put you in a state of anxiety just leaving your house. I remember there was a period of time where I can't remember what show it was, but they were talking about different conditions, right? And there was one where it was allergies, right? So there was one where you were allergic to, I mean, things like people who are hay fever, right? Allergic to pollen. When summer comes, it's a wrap for you, right? But there are certain ones where you're allergic to like moisture levels in the air, which means that if it rains, but even if it doesn't, the moisture level in the air, you can't go to certain tropical countries. So you have to do certain preventative measures. Some of them have to walk around with in a physical bubble. Like, so there's a suit that they wear to be able to leave the house, which means that they don't leave the house. And then it's like, okay, cool, I need to sellotape the thing. I mean, I'm talking about extreme things, but in terms of how it affects your lived experience, it means that when you step out the house or even when you're inside the house, you don't feel safe. And one of the things about not feeling safe is that when you don't feel safe, it brings a form of anxiety, whether you're going to a new friend's house, whether you're going to a new country, whether you get to a hotel and you have to wipe everything down. You don't trust the food, so you have to bring your own snacks and stuff like that. All that kind of stuff can add to your level of anxiety. And sometimes something like that, you can be like, oh, I'm used to it, I've always been like this. Sure. Yes, Coral, good morning, great to see you too. You can feel like, oh, I'm used to this is just part of my lived experience. But then you realize, actually, no, this is adding to a stress, so much so there's a certain thing where you also got to think to yourself, what's my average level of stress? What's my capacity for stress? And what you might find is that, okay, cool, yes, I have this is my normal thing, but my normal level of stress is up here. Like, I'm used to that so much that I've been acclimatized to it that I don't notice it anymore. But the slightest thing will tip me over because I'm already at the top. Yeah. And that can lead to burnout if it's unmanaged. What can we do about that? What's the psychological connection with that? What is the physical connection? What are the emotional effects that knowing that you're constantly a threat will have on your personal state of mind, your personal well-being, your physical well-being? There's a show on Netflix called Supercell, and it's actually taken from the idea of sickle cell, right, and turning that from a negative into a kind of positive. I haven't actually seen it yet, but the idea itself is great because it raises awareness for people who aren't aware of such an ailment, right? But there are people who are living in it all the time, right? So your blood cells don't form in the same way as everyone else. Usually they'll form round, and in this case, your blood cells form in a sickle cell shape, like a half moon, which means that when it's traveling around your body, it actually doesn't function the same way as normal blood cells do. Your capillaries, for example, are designed for your blood to flow through a certain way. If you have sickle cell, your blood cells are shaped in a certain way, which means that it can clog in a different way, right? So your body will be in severe pain all the time. I have a friend of mine who experiences it, and on a general level, if I ask her, like, what's your level today, between 1 and 10, usually as normal days, you might be like, oh, in terms of pain, I'm probably a 1. Like, I'm not even thinking about it. I'm maybe at a 0 most of the time when I wake up in the morning. But from her average level is about a 5 or 6 in levels of pain. Average level, like, that is at a good level. If I ask her on a good day, it'll be a pain level of 5 or 6 out of 10. For me, something would have to happen to me for me to get to 5 or 6. But because it's something that's a lived experience, she's like, oh no, yeah, I'm about 5. And then if it gets to a 7 or 8, then that's panic time. But for the most people, if you're at a 3 or 4, then you start to raise your eyebrows, right? So imagine what that does to your lived experience if you're constantly at a level of pain where you just find that to be normal now, but that actually is adding stress. And what happens is if you're friends with someone who's experiencing something which is a genetic condition, hereditary, for example, because our lived experience is not like that, we don't consider how it's affecting their everyday things. Just going towards the bathroom in the middle of the night can be an issue. Just being at home alone can be an issue, right? And just the idea of that level of fear and anxiety following you around, right? So when it comes to helping people like that or being friends with that, and this is something I wasn't necessarily thought sure I was going to be talking about, but one of the things I've realized about burnout is not only affecting the person who's experiencing it, but also the people who are their support system. Because one thing you'll notice is that pretty much every session I talk about, one of the things that helps burnout for any of the different subsets is who you have around you, who you can speak to about it, who you can share in that experience with. And if you are one of those people, then there's also this feeling that I want to help that person who's experiencing it. You've got to be able to identify it when you see the signs or changes in physical uh, changes, emotional changes, mental changes, behavioral changes. You got to be in a state where you can actually identify that. But then also, when you identify that, you got to know what to do to help. And what happens if there's nothing you could do to help? That can add stress to you too, if it's not managed over time, right? So, and I'll talk about that a little bit more at some point. But for today, the third um, fear of ill health can stem from is societal emphasis on physical appearance and wellness. Now, this one is one I didn't think I'll be talking about until I really deeped it. And this is something where in 2024, there is a huge push for people to go to the gym, for people to go to run clubs, for people to do all kinds of stuff and have um, a physical appearance. People are going to different countries to do BBLs. People are paying thousands to get their teeth done and to have liposuction. And the idea about what's it called? The idea about nip tucks and going to LA to get your face lifted and all that kind of stuff is something that used to be almost not exactly taboo, but it was something that people thought was strange. Where nowadays people are doing it all the time. And it's interesting being in this time because it adds so much pressure. And I've realized the reason why I added this is because I'm conscious of how young people are affected by this. So if I go to the gym, I notice that there's young teenagers who are in the gym. And it's interesting because that age level has been getting lower and lower and lower. I've noticed, and I wonder, like, wow, there used to be health signs that say that you can't go to the gym and you can't do certain types of exercise because it will stunt your growth, because it will have all this effect on your body. Whereas now it seems that people are just there from really young ages. And it's something I've really noticed. Like, what happens when you're aware of your physical appearance so much that you're trying to change or keep control of it at a young age? If you're doing that at 13, what's going to happen when you're a full grown person? Like, it becomes something which takes over your life. Like, I need to get this meal prep. I need to be able to, I need to be able to have my biceps at a certain level. I need to have like the six pack. And if I don't, I may not have, attraction from this person. I may not have all this kind of stuff, right? And I may not get the followers and all those kind of things. So those are like the three things can stem from in terms of ill health. One is it can stem from personal experience with illness. Two, it can stem from family history or hereditary conditions. Number three is societal emphasis on physical appearance or wellness. Okay. Those things are a big sign to pay attention to. What is your lived experience with those three, and what is the effect that it's having on your mental, physical, emotional health, such that it can add the stress within your body, which will lead you towards burnout. The fever, the fear can lead to hypochondria. Okay. Now, if you're not familiar with what hypochondria is, it's when you have a severe fear of the risk of getting ill. These are the people who do over and beyond the the I don't know what you'd call normal rate of fear for anything. It's kind of natural to be like, okay, cool, there might be something ill, but they're the people who go looking for it. So, for example, if you have a cough, they're the ones who will go online and they'll find what can happen if I have a cough, and they'll have 100 things, and that'll drive them to a state of fear, and they'll put everything into their body to kind of avoid everything. Right? They're the ones who are going to be germaphobes. They're the ones who are going to clean their hands after they shake someone's hand. They're the ones who are going to be worried constantly about health. And to be specific, it's not just worry, it's being in a state of fear, of anxiety constantly about things that are not reasonably likely to happen. Okay. So it can lead to hypochondria. It can lead to anxiety about health outcomes, and it can lead to constant obsession with preventative measures. Like, what can we do to avoid this? Which means you'll stop going to certain places, stop eating certain things, etc. And again, the overall idea is that it's just that adding to fear. Fear leads to cortisol, right? Which is your fear response. Cortisol builds up in the body, but if you're constantly at fear, then that cortisol has nowhere to go. It stays there. When it stays in the body at high levels for a prolonged period of time, it becomes toxic to the body. And then it manifests in physical, mental, emotional, behavioral changes, which unmanaged over time, which continue to build that cortisol level, which leads you towards burnout. And that's when you start to either fuse out completely or become emotionally exhausted. You have depersonalization, which is where you don't feel like yourself and you're running on fumes and you're going in robot mode or whatever. Or you have reduced sense of personal accomplishment, which is where you feel like you're worthless and nothing you do makes a difference, right? These are huge effects that can happen just from the idea of bringing fear into your life. Okay. The fear of ill health can manifest in excessive worry, like I said, about your physical well-being, leading to stress-related symptoms such as headaches, muscle tension, and insomnia. One of the things I get really surprised about is we still don't really understand how these things are linked, right? If you're not sleeping well, if you're finding yourself having spasms in your body and you're not tired, right? If you find yourself having headaches and back pains and things like that, these are all things that could stem from this increased level of stress in your body, which can stem from fear of ill health. Now, when you hear it first off, you're like, oh, how can that happen? But I hope today you've had a little bit of an idea about how these things are connected. One of the reasons why I'm doing these talks so much is that there are people who are experiencing this, but don't realize that's what they're experiencing. And because they don't realize it, they haven't been able to put a label on it. They don't know what to do about it. And then the tension and the fear just builds to the point where it's unmanageable, and they will lead to burnout. And at that point, it can sometimes be too late when you're in the depths of it. And then once you're in burnout, it's a lot harder to get out of burnout than it is to avoid it. So I'm doing these sessions to hopefully help somebody out there to recognize the symptoms early and realize that actually, to avoid getting to a state of burnout, all we need to do is do certain behavioral changes, emotional changes, put certain boundaries up, change our state of mind or perspective on certain things, put in certain preventative measures or things into our habits that are going to help us to reduce this level of stress in our body, this level of cortisol, which means that over time, we'll be able to avoid it completely. The fear can result in excessive exercise as well. We've mentioned that before. Restrictive diets and unbalanced focus on health at the expense of other life priorities. When health becomes the only priority, let's say, that becomes an issue. Suddenly, okay, you're not thinking about anything else. You're not thinking about family. You're not thinking about your job. You're not thinking about your being able to give back to society. You're not thinking about what you do have. You're thinking about the fear about what you might not have if you're not in 100% health all the time. You've got your supplements. You've got, before you wake up in the morning, not before, as soon as you wake up in the morning, there's 100 pills you take just to be able to, make it out the door. You have your morning routine, which is like 3 hours long, just because you want to make sure you're healthy, like you, all this kind of stuff, things that are great in moderation, but it becomes your entire life. It becomes suffocating. If you miss one of them, you feel like anxiety rising up in your body. It's like, oh my gosh, I took 4 out of 5 pills, but that last pill is going to finish me. These kind of things are when you start to pay attention to, okay, cool, maybe there's something about this which is adding to the anxiety. And the irony is, being so fearful of health can bring on health conditions, right? So what do you do about it? Let's get to a stage where we're now aware that I have a fear of ill health, right? It's getting to unmanageable levels. It's getting to that state where, as great as it is in its moderation, this is actually something that's causing me damage. Okay, so what do I do about it at that point? There's 6 points that I want to help. Yes, Dilo, good to see you, bro. It's been a long time. Hope you're well. And just a reminder for people who are just tuning in, this is I'm a burnout coach, so burnout is what I'm talking about. And today we're looking at the burnout from fear of illness. So this is a series of 6 that I'm taking from Napoleon Hill's 6 basic fears, which are fear of poverty, fear of criticism, fear of ill health, fear of loss of love of someone, fear of old age, and fear of death, right? So those 6 fears I'm breaking down one by one. Today we're looking at the fear of ill health. It can lead to all kinds of different things, which we've established. Yes, Eng, welcome. Been a while. So now we're looking at what to do about it. How do you recover from this fear of ill health? Number 1 is practice self-care routines that prioritize mental, emotional, and physical well-being, right? And this is one of those things that you can add those into your habits, your routines. Okay, so if there's, for example, if I'm suffering from ill health, one of the things I need to do is factor in the idea about having time off. Some basic things like that. Make sure that I journal, get the things off my mind into paper so I don't have to think about them anymore. Make sure I have those things that are fun, that I enjoy, to release that cortisol level, and do natural remedies as well, as instead of relying on pills all the time. Making sure that my diet is something that's natural. One of the things that I find interesting is a lot of the supplements are basically trying to replace what you would get from a good natural diet, right? So we know what to do really to keep ourselves healthy, if physically anyway, right? Rest well, eat well, exercise well. Those 3 things are going to have you in a state where you're in a peak physical health, right, for your body. But then being scared about it to the point where it drives you down towards this wall of burnout is where we need to be aware, right? So the first thing you can do to recover from that fear of ill health is practice self-care routines, making sure that you do stuff that prioritize your mental, emotional, and physical well-being. Number 2 is seeking professional medical advice. One of the things I've noted about this journey in in helping people from burnout is that there is a point where having a coaching session, even going to therapy and stuff, is not going to help, because you have such levels of hormones within your body. Because like I said, burnout is there because of an increased level of stress hormones, cortisol, within your body over a prolonged period of time. That's a hormonal issue as well as everything else. There's things you can do with your physical, mental, and emotional habits that can help reduce that. But you may be at such a high toxic level that even doing all the normal things are not going to help you enough to be able to keep that level at a reduced level. So at that point, you need to go and seek medical advice. You need to go to a psychiatrist. You need to go to your GP, and they're going to be able to help you, to give you something which will get you to a state that gives you just enough to be able to be like, okay, cool, I've got a handle on this. I can actually get to a state to build this pattern. Because if you're in the depths of burnout, trying to build a habit is going to be so difficult, and you're going to be wondering, why can't I just do this simple thing? Well, it's maybe because your levels are so high you can't even think straight. You can't. Your behavior is such that you're a challenge of it. On my way to work, have a dope day, King God, and keep the positive energy up. Up, up, up. You're dope. So thank you, man. I really appreciate it. And hope you have a good day at work as well. Make sure you get your time to yourself. When stress levels are high in the workplace, make sure you take step out. This is a really side note, but I remember being in the office, right, and going to the bathroom, and I remember hearing someone in the cubicle next to me just breathing. They weren't using the toilet. They were just there to take a moment. And I was like, good on you. Like, sometimes you need a moment to just do your breathing exercises and all that kind of stuff, right? So again, back to the topic. You're looking at one of the six, nonstop. One of the six fears by Napoleon Hill in his book Think and Grow Rich is fear of ill health. So now I'm looking at how that is connected to burnout and what we can do to reduce it. One of the things I talked about is practicing self-care. Number 2 is seeking professional advice, medical advice, and regular checkups to address health outcomes. So one of the things that can build up stress is worry. Okay. Worry can build up when we don't go regularly to check up, because if you know what the answer is, then you don't have to worry about it. If you are, for example, your sexual health is really important. We talk about physical, mental, emotional health. Your sexual health is just as important. I'm currently helping the NHS on one of their research with sexual health, right? And one of the things that we talk about is the fear that someone has when they are being told that they may have something, right? And what happens psychologically or behaviorally when you receive that notification that you need to come in to get this thing checked out, or you've been with someone who has something, and so or even, for example, with COVID, when you got that message on your phone that says you've been in contact with someone who has, right? If you don't go and get it checked out regularly, then the worry is going to build up. What if? But then the fear of it's crazy how it works psychologically. The fear of it being a yes can stop you from going there, because you don't want to face the possible reality, even though there is also a possibility that it could be a no, right? And then what happens is, if you don't go early and you go later on down the line, it can just build up in your body to the point where it's unmanageable. What often happens is not necessarily the ailment itself, but when we go and check for it. Even things like cancer, if you go there early enough, if you go to the signs early enough and get the checkup early enough, a lot of these ailments can be dealt with. That you could be put on programs, and within a couple of years max, you'll be able to be free from it, right? The problem happens when we wait. And not only does the ailment build up, but so does the stress. It's in the back of your mind that you should go and check up, but then you don't. So the point of, by the time you do, it's at a level that you can't actually help with anymore. So having regular checkups keeps this at bay. You can go to your GP and say, I want a full checkup. That means they'll do your blood test, they'll do your swabs, they'll do urine sample, they'll do all those things, and they'll cover you for everything, right? And then you can say to yourself, maybe every 6 months or so, or at least once a year, but every 6 months or so, you'll be like, okay, cool, I'm good. And for example, if you're doing a sexual health test every 3 months or so, because I think some ailments, they take 3 months to show in the body, enough to be traced. So every 3 months or so, go to your GP or go to your sexual health clinic, go to your clinic in general and say, okay, can I get tested for this? I think there's a lot of stigma around a lot of the stuff, but honestly, get yourself past that stigma. What would you prefer? Other people not to know, or for you to be living with an illness that you can't deal with now because you've waited so long? When you think about it in terms of what's worse, for me personally, I'd rather just get it tested and be okay. All right. So number 3, in terms of things you can do to help recover from fear of ill health, is engage in relaxation techniques such as meditation, yoga, or deep breathing exercises. The reason is this really helps reduce the cortisol level. One of the things, the reason why we're in stress all the time is because we feel like we're in a state of threat. Okay, there's a deadline coming up, or this person looks dangerous to me, or I have this conflict that I need to resolve, and what if I lose the person, or what if they abandon me like my father did? All these kind of things can happen and increase your level of stress in your body. So what happens is, to reduce that level of stress in the body, you need to get to a stage where you're physiologically calm. So when you're stressed, Eminem says it, Palms are heavy, knees weak, arms are heavy. There's vomit on his sweater already. Mom's spaghetti. He's nervous, but on the surface, he looks calm and ready, right? So you can feel all this physiologically internally, but on the surface, you can look calm because you you put in your practices. But what actually happens is it's kind of like fake it till you make it. If you do the breathing exercises, if you take some time out, if you do your meditation and your yoga, it physiologically brings your body down to a calm state, which means that it tells your mind, your emotions, that you are safe, which means that you start breathing. Your breathing changes naturally, and then you can deal with what the actual problem is. I always talk about the stress versus the stressor. The stress is what's happening physically, physiologically within the body. The stressor is what's happening externally that causes the stress. That person who you don't feel safe around, that the fact that you're walking on a bridge and you're scared of heights, all those things are the stressors, the external things. The stress is what's happening physiologically in the body, the internal things. Sometimes you need to manage the stress within your body to be able to handle the stressor. And sometimes you need to handle the stressor to be able to handle the stress. But being aware that there are two things happening together to bring that fear or bring that state. All right. So, number 4 in things you can do to recover from fear of ill health is challenge irrational beliefs about health and cultivate a balanced approach to wellness. Balance is so important just in life. But if you're in constant fear, you might have to stop and think about the way you're looking at it. Where is this coming from? Realizing that actually this came from an irrational fear my parents had, for example, means that, okay, actually now I know that I don't need to be scared of sharks because I don't even go swimming, right? So when things happen on screen, I don't need to jump because I know that I'm safe. Okay. I don't need to worry about arachnophobia because I know that statistically speaking, there's very little chance that I'm going to be bitten by anything poisonous that's going to cause me harm because there aren't any. I'm in a country where I'm safe from these things, right? I can wipe down surfaces and stuff if I want to, but generally I am such that my immune system is actually going to keep me from harm's way in most situations, right? Plus, if especially when, and I see this a lot with parents with young children, you keep them away from a lot of things, which means their immune system doesn't have a chance to actually function and build, which means that later on it can actually cause them harm because they don't have the resilience in the body to be able to fight off the common cold or any of these natural germs that go naturally right around the body. One of the things that I've always found interesting is on these adverts they talk about um, harmful germs, which means there are unharmful germs, right? There are germs that are just normal. We're living in the world, all right? So there's certain things you can't avoid, which actually don't cause you harm. But if we consider them to be harmful, then it means that we are constantly going to be in a state of stress. Number 5, in terms of things you can do to avoid or recover from fear of ill health, is establish healthy lifestyle habits, including nutritious eating, regular exercise, and adequate sleep. These are things I've talked about before, so I won't go into too much in there, but having a regular, healthy lifestyle, balanced lifestyle. Number 6, the last one, is connecting with a support network of individuals who understand and validate your health concerns. Remember, everything always comes back to who's around you. And sometimes you need someone who's aware of your conditions. I remember dating someone who had a health condition they didn't tell me about, which came to the surface, right? And it was really eye-opening situation because I didn't know what to do as a result of not being told about what to do in this case. I didn't know where the EpiPen was. I didn't know what exercises to do to bring the breathing back down. Like I didn't know any of those things. I was just in the dark. So I had to fish for things. Like in the moment, I had to effectively diagnose. I'm not a health professional. Like, if this is happening, it's like, okay, talk to me. What's happening? What are you experiencing? What do I need to do to help? All those kind of things. Like, no, I can do it myself. It's like, no, you cannot. Okay. And even if you could, would you choose that? Okay. So when you're in a situation where you have a fear of ill health or you have a genuine medical condition, which might be hereditary or it might be just you, if you have a personal experience which is triggered by certain experiences, let the people around you know, especially if it's something that is inevitable, because them as friends want to be able to help if something happens. And I find that happening so much that people keep things from other people because they don't want to be a burden. And what ends up happening is you end up being a burden to yourself and others by keeping it from them. Because when these things inevitably do happen, they don't know what to do. And it can actually be dangerous. Because, for example, if you're having a seizure, there might be certain things that you don't do because things that you would do naturally with other conditions might actually exacerbate your condition. So they might think they're helping when they're actually making it worse. And the only reason is because you haven't told them what you're experiencing. Okay. So create a supportive network of individuals who understand and validate your health concerns. One of the things I've seen culturally is people, like, let's say, for example, you have anxiety. Having people around you who understand that can know that, okay, this is a situation where my friend is going to be in a state of anxiety, so help. So here's what I can do to help them. Okay, let me make sure that I'm always keeping an eye on them, checking up on them. Are you okay? Are you all right? What's your level of anxiety here? Do you need to leave? Do we need to call the Uber? um, do you need to take a walk before you come back in this space to be able to get your nervous system down? All those things, if you're aware, or if you make sure the people around you are aware of what your physical conditions, your health conditions, even emotionally, for example, are they someone who's going to be able to turn off the news because they can tell you're being you're an empath and you're taking on the pain of the people who are on screen more than your body can handle? Do you have people around you who know what you're going through, who will do the research and find out things that you don't know about yourself? Do they know where who the people you need to call in the state of emergency are? Do they know if they're going to be going to a restaurant? Do they know that you are lactose intolerant? Do they know that you need to be gluten free? Do they know that you don't eat these kind of meats because they have a physical effect on your body? Do they know that dairy products can have a physical manifestation in your body such that um, that you need to go to a hospital? Do they know that you have an EpiPen? All these things, if they know, then it means that when they go out with you, they can be aware of it too, which means that you can be at peace a little bit. You can be like, okay, cool. I know I need to be aware of this, but I also know that other people are aware of this. So if I don't see it, they will. Because that's one of the things that also happens. You can't be aware of everything all the time. And so you might miss something. But if you know someone, or is there people around you who are aware, then they'll be able to help. One of the things I find really good, interesting about mental and emotional illnesses and ailments and conditions is that when you've experienced it, you recognize it in other people in a way that they might not recognize it in themselves, or they might be in denial about. Right, so you might be able to say, okay, cool. This person is starting, their tics are starting to show. They're bouncing their knees, or they're scratching in a certain way, or they're jittery, and I recognize that because, okay, this person might need a physical connection. So let me hold their hand, or or give them a hug for like 12 seconds to allow them their body to recover. All these kind of stuff, and you might recognize it in someone who you never even met before because you recognize the signs and symptoms. How much better so that the people around you are aware of it for you, right? So they can see, because sometimes you don't see your behavioral changes, you don't see your tics, you don't see your tells early. Sometimes, but it can be obvious to other people. Okay, so when it comes to things you can do to help with your fear of ill health, number one is practice self-care routines that prioritize mental, emotional, and physical well-being. Number two is seek professional and medical advice and regular checkups to address health concerns. Number three is engage in relaxation techniques such as meditation, yoga, or deep breathing exercises. Number four is challenge irrational beliefs about health and cultivate a balanced approach to wellness. Number five is establish healthy lifestyle habits, including nutritious well-being, nutritious eating, regular exercise, and adequate sleep. And six is connect with the support network of individuals who understand and validate your health concerns. What that might look like, actually, I didn't mention, is joining a Facebook group or something, or an Instagram group, or a community group with that condition or ailment, so that you feel supported with people who understand you, because you might not get that from your family or friends. They might not really get it. Sometimes you need to be around people who are actually experiencing it, so you don't need to explain yourself all the time. And I find that to be really important. And having that being able to go to there and say, listen, group, I'm feeling this right now. And for them to say, it's okay, we know. Try this and try that. And you're heard, you're seen, you're felt. We understand. Can help you get back to a stage of reduced cortisol within your body. Okay. So if this is something you need help with, if any of this resonates with you, get in touch with me. Let's talk about it more. Book a call, and then we'll see how I can help. Tomorrow, I'm going to be talking about fear of loss of love of someone, which is going to be a very interesting one. That's definitely an emotional burnout connection. And if it's something that is a trigger for you, one, I would encourage you to this is now your trigger warning, basically. But even then, it might be one of the things I find is, right, trigger warnings are important because they let you know there's something coming up which might trigger you. But sometimes you need to go through the trigger to be able to heal it, and you need to face it and deal with what you're triggered by to be able to be free from it. It's not something you want to keep not something you would choose necessarily to keep for the rest of your life. Triggers are there to raise awareness about something, but helping them is an even better option. So tomorrow is fear of loss of someone, loss of love of someone. So I will see you then. And whatever you're doing today, I hope you stay safe. I hope you stay away from burnout. Make sure you protect yourself, your people around you, keep your boundaries. Take some time for yourself. Have joy. Do something fun today and help release yourself from the shackles of fear, which can lead to burnout. I'll see you tomorrow.